you've cast coaches and teachers in a light where you have to stop and doubt. You have to be suspicious now. You can't just concern yourself with, it's okay. This is school. These are teachers. This is my kid's coach. I'm trusting that person. That trust wasn't well-founded. You heard these kids. And asking them to exploit themselves in the most personal ways is it's feeding a disease or whatever you're claiming was the root of these problems that you yourself weren't addressing in any meaningful way. I do find the recidivism factors and the seriousness factors, which I've considered by statute, are indicative that are consistent with the prison term being imposed, which I will be doing at this time. The harm is great. I mean, this is really difficult to hear. It's haunting what's going on with a kid that goes to school and what these kids have to live with. With respect to count 1, pandering sexually oriented matter involving a minor, that felony 2 is a base term of 7 years. That's Reagan Tokes. So it's a term of 7 to 10.5 years. That does carry the provisions as a Tier 2 sex offender. I'll take that from your attorney when he has a moment. 5 years of mandatory post-release control supervision. That supervision starts when a prison term ends. That supervision is by the adult parole authority. You must report as required or you will be indicted for a felony of escape. If you are non-compliant, you'll be returned to prison, may be returned to prison as a sanction in incremental periods of time for up to half of your original base prison term. Moving on to count 6, that is a felony 3 of compelling prostitution. I'm imposing 3 years. That will run consecutive with count 1 for an aggregate of a base term of 10. Count 7, 3 years, concurrent with count 6. That's a felony 3 of extortion. Extorting, frightening these kids, that if they don't do what the phantom on the other end is telling them to do, you would make their circumstances even worse. Count 9, a felony 3, attempted illegal use of a minor in nudity-oriented material. That's 3 years, concurrent with the other 3-year terms, which are consecutive to count 1. Count 10, importuning. Felony 5, 1 year. Counts 1, 6, and 9 are each Tier 2 sex offenses. Count 10 is a Tier 1. 5 years of mandatory PRC in counts 1, 6, 9, and 10. 1 to 3 in count 7, trumped by the 5 years. Moving on to count 11, a felony 5 of importuning. That felony 5 is being punished by 1 year in prison. That renders you a Tier 1 sex offender. The 1-year term will run concurrent with the other 3-year terms consecutive to the 7, which is count 1. That's 5 years of mandatory post-release control. Count 12 is importuning. 1 year, Tier 1, 5 years of post-release control. That 1 year will run concurrent with the 3 consecutive to the 7. Count 13 and F4, pandering sexually oriented matter involving a minor. I'm imposing an 18-month term concurrent with all counts except 1. Count 16, F3. Like count 13, this renders you a Tier 2 sex offender. And if I didn't mention it, the importunings are all Tier 1. In count 16, it's a 3-year term concurrent with all counts except count 1. You are a Tier 2 sex offender, 5 years of mandatory post-release control supervision. Count 17, extortion, felony 3 years. 1 to 3 years of mandatory post-release control. Count 18, felony 3, attempted illegal use of a minor in nudity-oriented materials or performances. 3 years. You're Tier 2 with that. 5 years of mandatory post-release control supervision. Count 19, compelling prostitution, felony 3 years. concurrent with all counts except one. This renders you a Tier 2 sex offender. It carries 5 years of mandatory post-release control. Count 20, attempted illegal use of a minor in nudity-oriented material or performances. That felony 3 is a 3-year prison term. Tier 2, 5 years of post-release control supervision. Count 22 is a felony 3 of tampering. I'm imposing a 3-year prison term concurrent with all counts except one. Post-release control is discretionary, typically up to 2 years, trumped by the mandatory 5 years. The aggregate is 7 to 10.5 plus 3 years. You have restitution to which you agreed with victim number 1 in the amount of $3,250. You've agreed to restitution in the amount of $850.80 with victim number 6. With victim number 8, $772.30. I'd like to go through the tier advisements. Mr. Botnick, if I could please have that form.
Yes, Your Honor. If I may approach.
Yes. This form indicates that you discussed with Mr. Botnick your duties to register as a Tier 1 and Tier 2 sex offender, which means that you'll be registering with the county where you reside at the moment, which would be Cuyahoga County, as you will be remanded to our jail today. You will be reporting and re-registering where you live, work, or go to school. As a Tier 1 sex offender, you will be doing this for 15 years with annual verification. As a Tier 2 sex offender, it's 25 years of this obligation, and you must verify it every 180 days. Mr. Botnick, did you discuss this thoroughly with your client this morning?
Yes, Your Honor. We had the opportunity to review it last week prior to the hearing.
Mr. Carlson, would you like me to review this on the record, word for word with you, or do you believe that you have a sufficient understanding of this?
I understand.
Did you have enough time to discuss with Mr. Botnick what your obligations are as a registered sex offender pursuant to statute?
Yes, I do.
Do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Do you need any more time with him to discuss this?
No.
May I acknowledge by signature that your client is in full understanding of his obligations by virtue of his signature on this form?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You will receive credit for any time that you've served. The sheriff will calculate that credit. It will be delivered by our sheriffs to penitentiary. I'm assessing the cost of this prosecution. You may perform community work service in the penitentiary to satisfy this cost. I'll remind you that there was a no contact order as a plea condition. It's not part of the sentencing. That's something to which you already agreed. I wish you the best, Mr. Carlson. I hope that in some manner the victims in these offenses feel some sense of justice, feel that they do not bear responsibility, that the responsibility is on you, and then at this time you're going to be paying the consequences for your conduct. I'm sure that, well, I've done something statutorily that you expressed remorse today. I'm sure this is difficult for your family. I know that you have people who care about you. This is the price you got to pay for what you did to these kids. Is there anything further on behalf of the state of Ohio?
Oh, Your Honor, can we approach briefly?
Yes. I believe the state may have another couple of items to place on the record. And as you do, I'm going to also mention Mr. Carlson, and for the record, that consecutive terms are being imposed pursuant to 14C. Specifically, I do find that it's necessary to protect the public from future crime for the reasons that I previously mentioned with respect to the documents that I considered. I also believe it's not disproportionate to the seriousness of your conduct and not disproportionate to the danger you pose to the public, and that the history of criminal conduct as demonstrated in the 21 months demonstrates that consecutive terms are necessary to protect the public from future crime by you. And two, at least two of the offenses committed as part of this course of conduct was harm that was so great or unusual that no single prison term for any of the offenses could adequately reflect the seriousness of your conduct. Thank you. Turning this over to Mr. Ackham.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just for clarification, there was a typo in the sentencing memorandum provided by the state. The felonies of the third degree are low tiers. They're 9 to 36 months. I believe there was a typo with regards to the sentencing penalties in the state's brief. So we just wanted to clarify for the record.
Thank you. May I clarify those counts just for the record? Then I believe that's counts 9, 18, 20, and 16.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, Your Honor. We apologize for that. Prior to this sentencing, there were items that were recovered at the time of the defendant being apprehended, and these items have been requested to be returned. So I just want to put that on the record briefly. Defense counsel and I have spoken with this. I've spoken with the detectives in this case. There is one bag filled with 3 flash drives, an iPad and tablet that belonged to the defendant's mother, a Dell PC tower, and a Western digital hard drive. I believe those will all be returned back to the defendant's parents. There was no forfeiture on this case, Your Honor, but they were in the possession of Highland Heights Police Department, so we are going to turn those over.
Thank you. Mr. Botnick, anything?
And Your Honor, that is what we had discussed, and we appreciate those items being reviewed.
Sure. Thank you. Is there anything further on behalf of the state?
I don't think so, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Botnick?
No, Your Honor, thank you very much.
All right. Best wishes to everyone. Thank you for your time. We're in recess.